to EPC, to Pallavi Madam, and to all the joinees here. I know it's a very difficult post-lunch session. Keeping awake is really a big challenge. So, but you will have to bear with us. A little bit about BML, as Mr. Garodia said, that we are one of the country's biggest, probably the country's biggest manufacturer of earth-moving equipment. We operate in 3 business verticals. That is the mining and construction sector, which is the heavy earth-moving sector, the defense and aerospace sector, and the rail and metro sector. Now, let us look at the value chain. Let us take one example. And with that example, I think we'll be able to appreciate why the earth-moving equipment is a very important cog in that entire value chain. So if we take the value chain of a power production and distribution, so it basically starts with, as far as India is concerned, I would still say we are predominantly dependent on the coal sector, right? And so the value chain, the entire value chain, it will start with the raw material which is required for producing the power. So for getting out the raw material, for extraction of the raw material, it is the earth-moving equipment which are required at various mine sites. And once the raw material is taken out, then it goes for initial cleaning and all, and then it is transported through the railways, wagons, through the trucks to various power plants, where it is further taken up for generation of electricity. And further, the electricity generated is transmitted and distributed through the entire system of transmission lines, transformers, and the grid system. So that is the entire value chain for a power generation and distribution. Now here, the critical thing which the earth-moving equipment they give is, number one, they directly impact the cost of production or cost of extraction of coal. How? By way of availability, maintaining the availability of equipment at the mines, by way of excellent quality of the equipment. Number 2, lowering the capex in terms of the pricing at which they are purchased by the mine owners and the mine operators. And of course, number 3, by reducing the environmental pollution, the climate change challenges to the bare minimum. Now, if we look at today's business scenario, the 3 C's which are critically impacting businesses all over the world, all across the world, are number 1 is the climate crisis, number 2 is the COVID, and number 3 is the conflicts. Now, in this present scenario, it is very, very important that all the raw material which is extracted or the critical material which is required for the infra sector or for the power generation sector is extracted at a highly efficient and bare minimum pricing. So here the earth-moving sector or the earth-moving equipment, they play a major role. Coming to the efforts of BML in promoting the MSMEs, I would like to make a statement here that any country which has to grow and which has to be self-reliant has to have a very robust MSME as its backbone. And under the leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister, this drive has it has gathered steam over the last few years, and there is a tremendous thrust on developing the local supply chain infrastructure to really give the good fruits of localization as well as self-reliance. In this context, I'll just give some numbers that in the past 3 years, not only has BML been able to achieve the minimum requirement as prescribed by the Ministry of 25% domestic procurement from MSMEs, but we have far exceeded this by almost 6 to 7%. And in our thrust for localization through the MSMEs, we are further going to expand our MSME base and increase its percentage manifold over the next few years. Some of the some of the measures that we have taken and some of the activities that we have uh, taken up are: number one, uh, having regular interactions and workshops with the MSMEs so that they are able to understand the kind of product that is required and the expectation of BML for the manufacturing for the capital goods sector. Because as you would all appreciate, the sectors that we work in, there the supply chain has to be very, very efficient. Supply chain has to be very quality conscious, and the availability and the overall the overall availability of the material, continuous availability is very, very critical for a capital goods sector, and especially in sectors which require, which involve the human life. For example, the rail and metro sector, which involve the country's security. For example, the defense and aerospace sector. So we are very conscious of the fact that MSMEs are not only to be brought into our fold, but also they have to be uh, oriented in a manner which meets expectation of the industry that we operate in. And in this, the MSMEs also have to really understand and come up to the level of our expectations, especially in terms of quality and deliverability. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roy, for sharing your thoughts and insights on this important subject. Now we come to the medical device sector has played a significant role to help the world deal with the COVID pandemic, which has created havoc all over the world. My next set of questions will be to Mr. Rajiv Nath. How medical devices manufacturing supply chains are shaping itself to deal with the emerging healthcare challenges in India, and what role do you see for the MSMEs in the future supply chains in the medical device sector? Over to you, Mr. Nath.
Thank you, Mr. Arun. Thank you, APC, for organizing this interesting webinar today. And based on the great potential for exports that we can see unleashing before us in many areas, including medical devices. In medical devices, we do think it's the next big story after IT and pharma. And in engineering goods, definitely, I would say the steepest increase can be seen over here in the next few years. We hope so, because India is being positioned as an alternative to China because of our precision engineering and affordable technologies. So I will be talking both from HMD, my company's perspective, as well as my role as the forum coordinator for IMED, which is the Association of the Indian Medical Device Industry. The Indian medical device industry has got about 1,200 manufacturers currently, and nearly 90% of these manufacturers are in the MSME sector. My own company, HMD, started as an MSME. I'm the lucky son born with a silver syringe in my mouth. The company was put up in 1957 by my father. And my job is to accelerate the growth of the company. And last year, our turnover crossed 900 crore rupees. So we are no more an MSME. We've outgrown that. Like many companies, when we are venturing into the export market, we started with the strategy also of being an OEM to the larger MNC players internationally, whether it was in USA or in Europe. And our biggest markets were these two areas, USA and Europe. But we did realize that if we wanted to have value addition, stable markets, then we would have to create our own branding internationally. So as on date, nearly 95% plus of our production and exports that we do internationally to more than 120 countries is our own brand name. And with that, now we have grown to become the top 3 manufacturers for syringes in the world, and the largest manufacturers for auto-disable syringes in the world, which was required for COVID vaccination. The COVID vaccination, of course, was a big issue, I would say a big break on manufacturing exports on many product lines, including engineering products. But in the case of medical devices, it was a silver lining. So our association has been working very closely with various government departments in ramping up production capacities and in ramping up exports for medical devices internationally. In the case of disposables, there are many success stories. Along with HMD, you have Medico Electrodes makes disposable electrodes. You have Kanam Latex to make surgical gloves. You got G Surgiwear from Kanpur. You got MRK, another company making gloves. Then in the case of medical consumables, you've got a company called Romsons in Agra. You've got Medicure in Faridabad, making IV sets and drug delivery products, both these companies. Then you have a company called Healthium, which is very strong in the suture needle or sutures market. And then BL Life Sciences in the surgical kits market. And Tyno Orthotics in Chandigarh, Mohali area, which is very strong internationally in the rehabilitation aids market, consumables market. Then you've got medical electronics, in which you've got stalwarts like Trivitron Healthcare, which is India's second largest company in medical devices. You've got Elengers from Chandigarh, which is a very respected company in making X-ray machines and CT scan machines. You've got BPL, which is both importing and manufacturing the product, and now growing rapidly last few years. And you got Scanray, which became very famous in COVID times because of the huge production increase that they did in collaboration with BEML and the public sector companies to ramp up capacities for the ventilators. And you got a potential unicorn coming up in the name of ITPL, who's very strong in cath labs and specialized equipment in the medical electronic industry. In medical equipments, we got success stories like Midmark. It's a French company who bought out a Janak in Bombay, making hospital beds. You got Remy, which is very strong in the blood consumables and the blood storage facilities. You got Shivani and Phoenix in the incubator field. And then in the case of implants can be eye implants. You can have implants like cardiac implants, or you can have orthopedic implants. So in orthopedic implants, you got success stories like Biorad and Pitkar. In the case of implants for eyes, contact lens, India is the top 10 in the world again in that. So you got Apaswamy and Orolab from Chennai, very strong internationally. And in the case of cardiac, SMT and Merrill are doing wonderful jobs now internationally, worldwide. So not only in India, but they are getting the respect internationally. In diagnostics, our biggest success story is TransAsia, which is also India's largest medical device company. The only company with more than 1,000 crore rupees turnover, I would say. And they've got now 16 factories all over the world. So it's become India's first real sense MNC. The second company in the same sphere is Trivitron, which is India's second largest company, also in the IVD field and internationally. They also have 4 factories outside of India. And then you got Agape and Mitra Industries, which are Indian, I would say, champions. In the instrumentation area, you got ASCO, Allen Electronics making cautery products. You got HMD making surgical blades and surgical instrumentation, quality needles, making the largest manufacturer in the world to make suture needles in Noida, and Endomed Technologies making endoscopes. Now, typically, all these companies would be having their exports, which would be 10 to 20% of their turnover. A few cases may be higher, like Polymedico. But I would say that generally all of them have taken the route of going forward in the international market, initially as an OEM. And now they're trying to also establish their own brand names in India and internationally. So that is the value-added approach which most people have taken. Before and after COVID, there has been a huge increase in number of manufacturers in terms of manufacturing capacity. Now that COVID is nearly over, or it's becoming from pandemic to endemic, the demand for the medical disposables has come down drastically. HMD alone for our company, we were doing about 2.5 to 3 billion syringes per annum before COVID, which we increased capacity to over 4 billion pieces per annum. And within that, nearly 25% of what we were producing in our total turnover, we are exporting. In terms of AD syringes, which was required for the COVID vaccination internationally, we ramped up capacities from 500 million to 800 million in 2020 itself in 6 months' time, and then to 1.2 billion in the next 6 months by 2021, June, July. And currently, we have ramped up capacities to nearly 1.5 billion per annum. But from this month onwards, internationally, including India, the pace of vaccination is coming down very rapidly. So right now, I would say most of us would be having excess capacity, including ourselves. And the same challenge goes for other COVID critical products, whether it is masks or PPE kits, thermometers, oximeters, ventilators, oxygen therapy equipment. For all these kind of products, right now, there are a large number of manufacturers. If there were 8 manufacturers for ventilators, there are nearly 20 now. If there were 3 manufacturers to make oxygen therapy equipment, there are more than 30 now. If there were maybe 10 manufacturers to make N95 kind of surgical masks, now there are more than 80 manufacturers making that with ISI mark. So with quality and huge capacities, I would say there's now a huge pressure on the Indian manufacturers to go internationally to use their spare capacities. So more and more now the strategy for the MSMEs from India would be to take the position of China internationally. Because of COVID, there were huge supply chain disruptions initially in 2020, March to May. China, which was the dominant supplier in this particular product range, could not supply. And then every country in the world wanted to become Atmanirbhar or to have their own manufacturing capacities in medical devices. And India became a go-to country, but India had its own limitations in the initial years. And because of those limitations, India made the mistake of, I would say, restricting exports of medical devices. So for many of the products, including syringes last year, from varying from 3 months to 6 months to 9 months, many of the medical devices, including the I would say the export of testing kits, etc., was restricted by India. This has damaged India's reputation because it was the number 2 go-to country after China. And if we have to rebuild our credibility, we have to now get back that reputation, which was very hard-earned over there. So that is something that we have to see as a country going forward in terms of policy making. As far as the market potential goes internationally, it's a $50 billion, I would say, market in India. There's a bigger market outside of India. So there is more than a $10 billion investment opportunity over here. So as IMED, we are, along with Invest India, targeting various countries in bringing in collaboration, joint ventures and investments into India in the case of medical devices, because nearly 80% we are import dependent. So the statistics are very strange. I'll just reel them out to you. The imports are at 46,000 crore rupees last year before last, which went up to 63,000 crore rupees last year. Joe, the issue is regarding the 40% increase, steep increase in imports is definitely very disheartening. But on the plus side, we also have a good response on the export side. So on the export side, we went up from 20,000 crore rupees. We went up to 24,000 crore rupees last year, which is a healthy 20% increase in exports. Compared to 13,000 crore rupees in 5 years back. So it's doubled up in the last 5 years. And this healthy growth is something that we have to now build upon. So medical devices are in the 5 categories, like I explained to you. And in these 5 categories, the maximum exports is taking place in the case of consumables, which is at about 9,000 crore rupees out of the 24,000 crore rupee basket. And the bulk of this export that is happening to USA and to Germany, and followed by China, Brazil, and Holland over there. These are the top 5 destinations for Indian exports in terms of medical devices. That's what the MSME needs to now build upon and target upon. In the case of collaborations, we are targeting small setups of about, say, 5 crore rupees each to 25 crore rupee each investment size, and nearly 200 of these, if they come up, there can be substantial investments coming in. Similarly, for the case of joint ventures, we're targeting 50 of these from the 10 leading countries in the world. And if we have 20 FDI large MNCs coming in over there, that will help to create the ecosystem. So with more than 10 medical device parks coming up all over the country, which will help to make Indian manufacturers become globally competitive. There is now, I think, a good case over here where people who are making, I would say, furniture to move into making hospital furniture, people who are making automotive components, automotive parts, they can think in terms of moving into making medical equipment and medical electronics or instrumentation. And similarly, the case of implants. Many times, Indian entrepreneurs and engineers are not very familiar with the terms of medical devices, and we make the mistake of trying to copy the success stories. So if somebody starts succeeding in exporting syringes, then there are 20 people to follow that. Somebody starts exporting IV cannulas, there are 50 people to follow that. That creates over competition, I would say, unnecessarily too many people chasing the same pot. Of course, that healthy competition also helps us to penetrate more markets and to create brand India outside of India. But since there are more than 6,000 medical devices to be made, we need not be focused upon just a small percentage of medical devices in the country. And we need to have a broader range. If there are better policies which allow us to make them in the country, then we'll have also the surpluses available for export market. So Make in India for the global market has to be going forward. And the policies which are required to support that, number one, are in terms of making sure that the imports duties do not remain at 0% or 7.5%. It's a shame that India, being the fourth largest manufacturer for latex in the world, not a single examination glove is made in the country. So for COVID, nearly 2,600 crore rupees worth of examination gloves we were importing from countries like Malaysia at 0% custom duty rate. While at the same time, our manufacturers, 20 of them are really exporting more than 2 billion surgical gloves of high value, high price, and high grade quality. So they're not able to compete at the low end of the market. They have to compete at the upper end of the market. And the same manufacturers are importing the gloves as OEM under their brand name from Malaysia and Thailand, completely avoidable. So the 0 to 7.5% custom duty has to go away. Then only we can make more products in the country, and it'll be viable for us, like it's been happening in the case of mobile phone industry, the mobile battery industry. So component manufacturing and electronics, which were being earlier imported, like televisions and computers, now they're being made in the country with this supporting policies. The same policies need to be replicated in medical devices. These are our thoughts, and we can take advantage of jumping into the supply chains which were disrupted internationally and take it on from there and build brand India worldwide. Thank you.
Mr. Nath, it is really heartening to know, and you shared your success story that from MSME you transited to you grown up to a large scale sector, and you are exporting to many countries and you are diversified. And it's heartening to know that there are 1,200 manufacturers in the country, and most of them are MSMEs. It is wonderful to see your story, whatever you have shared with us, and whatever suggestions you have given. I'm sure the government will look into that. We all will support those comments, and we will take these recommendations to Government of India so that they give some solution to this, and maybe more and more MSMEs will increase in the country. Thank you, Mr. Nath, for your kind comments and your feedback. Thank you so much. Now we move on to Mr. Remco Vlies Duboy, the CEO of Kirloskar Brothers Private, Kirloskar Brothers Thailand Limited. Well, Mr. Remco, we would like to hear your perspective on KBL's success story in South Asian markets and its role in sourcing for its industry requirements from MSME units. Please also highlight what challenges and opportunities are present for Indian MSMEs to further strengthen their competitiveness in global supply chain. Over to you, Mr. Remco.
Thank you, Mr. Cordia. Thank you all the EEPC members for having me today. I have the outside-in view a little bit because we are based in Thailand. We are responsible for the Southeast Asian market. So we'll talk a little bit about what Indian companies do and don't do yet here, and especially in the engineering field, and what we can take away with it. And we have some real examples. I prepared a little bit of a presentation to give it a little bit of a structure. So I will share my presentation. I hope this is visible to all.
Yes, certainly. Please do that.
Okay, because would like to introduce a little bit the story. Kirloskar, I'm Mr. Remco Vlees-de-Bois. Although I look like foreign, I live over 15 years in Thailand. I know Mr. Kirloskar personally for I think 25 years. I'm also very Indian and Asian in my thinking as well. And we have a lot of initiatives to promote Indian companies outside India. I think Indian companies in India, they're very successful. You're doing great things. But if you look at the success rate of Indian companies outside India, especially here in Southeast Asia, it's very low. I would say we talked about China, we talk about Korea, we talk about all the other countries who have a much higher grade of penetration into the key markets like Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam. And I think one of the reasons where there's a low penetration is because the Indian companies look for a transaction, right? Buy and sell. The other companies look for a integrated supply chain together with the local companies, together with other companies operating locally. And by doing that, you strengthen the relation more. Today, they buy something, they buy rubber gloves. Tomorrow, they don't buy, they buy from Malaysia, right? But if we can set up a integrated supply chain with those parties, you can link them in, right? And based on that, you get a more long-term relation. And that is what we try to do as Kirloskar Brothers. We could have easily supplied our products from India into the Asian region. But we decided to make a local setup to better connect with the local markets and to connect with local MSMEs in Thailand, as well as MSME companies from India who operate in the Asian region. And I would like to give you some examples moving forward. So a little bit about Kirloskar Brothers, who don't know us. I think most of our Indian colleagues here know us, but we are the pump group. We also do engines, we do many other things, but this is the pump group. We have around 6,000 people. We have 16 plants. We have around 8 plants overseas. And one of those plants we have set up is in Thailand. So we're doing all kind of pump solutions. We'll not go into the detail here. It's not about our products, but it's just to get a little bit idea on what markets we serve. So we do a variety. We work with people in oil and gas, in electricity generation, irrigation, agriculture, industrial, on a commercial basis, but also on a G2G basis, where the Indian government give grants or loans to Laos and Vietnam, and we work together with those governments to give them a good solution out of India to improve their lives. So we are in Thailand, and you can say, why you're in Thailand? Yeah, it's a nice country, everything is cool, and why Kirloskar Brothers choose Thailand? You can choose maybe Singapore or Malaysia or any other thing, right? It's because the Thai culture and the Indian culture are very alike. Buddhism here, Lord Buddha came from India. There's a lot of words the same, a lot of cultural things are the same. We get fantastic promotions. So when an Indian company coming to invest in Thailand, but also in Indonesia or Singapore, but especially in Thailand, you can get up to 8 years tax holidays, right? So it's quite attractive to have a small setup in Thailand. There's a good logistic network. Super highway is on the way, right? So we can transport goods later from India all the way to Thailand and to China later on, because all will be connected. We have very good quality of staff and sub-vendors, Indian as well as Thai. And we have a very good Indian business community in Thailand, which can be a stepping stone also to support other SMEs and together develop a value chain. So this is why we have chosen Thailand. Gives you some background there. So here's the setup we have further. So we have offices in Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, and Laos. And this is our factory. So some people also know us because we helped in the cave rescue. Sorry, I hear some other people talking. Sorry.
I will suggest participants to kindly keep yourselves muted, otherwise it gets disturbed.
Okay.
Mr. Remco, kindly go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. So quickly, we also helped in the cave rescue together with the Indian Air Force and others to pump water out of the cave 3-4 years ago with the wild boar team in Thailand. Everybody know the story when the children were captured in the cave for 2 weeks, and Kirloskar brothers together with the Indian government supplied pumps to pump the water out of the cave. So this is a very good example of also goodwill, and we got a letter from the king, goodwill there. So let's talk a little bit about success stories, because that's where it's all about, right? And I give you some practical examples where we moved from transaction-based to value chain-based, where we work together very closely. If you look in poor countries, there's a lot of lack on water. There's not enough water. That means that people need to use other means to get water into their land to create a better yield for their farms. So based on that concept, we talked to the government in Laos and Cambodia, and we came up with an integrated solution out of India. And with MSMEs based in Thailand, from an Indian background, and we came with a total solution where we not just pumped the water, the pump is our product, but we also connect that to solar panels. So the pump can run on solar panels produced in India, right? And they need to have a control. So we developed a control with another company, MSME, from India, right? So they deliver the control. Then we developed a cloud-based solution where we can measure the water level in the well, which is another application designed by a company in Thailand, but the owners are all MSME from India. So we came with a total solution, a cloud-based management system where we run the pumps on solar, where we can bring the water to the farm on time, and the farmer can increase their yield. So rather than 1 time a crop, they can do 3 times a crop in Laos. So this is just a small example from when we work together as a MSME outside India and find opportunities to deliver a product much larger than the product you make by yourself. And that's where it becomes very interested for other parties to work together as an integrated solution. And this is how it looks like then in real, right? Another solution, we work with some other MSMEs to power one of the biggest power plants in Thailand. They're very big pumps, together with cooling towers made in India, other technology sourced from India and with India, and together we came with a unique solution for a coal-fired power plant in the north of Thailand. It's another example where you can see where you can have success combining this together. This is another project, flood water prevention. So all of Bangkok, we make a very big tunnel. All the rainwater goes into the tunnel, and from the tunnel it will be pumped into the river. So we not have any flooding in certain parts of Bangkok anymore. And this is what we call concrete foliate pumps, a very big pumps made out of concrete. Now the whole concept and working together, this consists out of many, many components. So rather than us making all the components by ourselves, we work together with MSMEs out of India, but also local MSMEs in Thailand to develop a complete solution for floodwater prevention. And now even the city of Mumbai is looking at implementing it because we have a lot of problems in the floodwater, right? So there's another example, real life example. By working together, you can create a better product than by your own. Sure, there are challenges. right? So I want to share a little bit of the opportunities and then a little bit of the threats. So what we see is when you work together with Indian companies, the innovation level and the cost base are very attractive to companies in Southeast Asia, right? We are much more competitive than many other of those. We know proper manufacturing standards. The Chinese don't. Every product can be different in the engineering field. We see that, right? So we see innovation, cost base, and understanding of the Asian culture is a key element where we can have a good opportunity, right? The other cool thing is that many Indian staff move overseas. So many of the engineering positions in companies in Asia are taken over by Indian engineers, which also helps to create an acceptance level for Indian products, which is very important. So I think that's another opportunity. Asia have a lot of emerging economies, right? And we need to look at the mega trends. We can look at short term, the logistic supply chain, Corona, there's a crisis in the world, maybe tomorrow the bomb fall, we're all dead. We don't know exactly, right? But if you look at the mega trends, if none of that happen, is that we will have more people, we will have problems because we need to feed them all, right? We have problems with the economy in terms of water, in terms of environmental issues, sustainability, things like that. So there are a couple of mega trends. And when you connect to those mega trends, the opportunity in Asia will continue to emerge in a much higher grade than when you look at Europe or America. Green and sustainable thinking is very high in the Southeast Asian market, especially in Thailand, right? Green awareness. And I think India also do a lot of things green out of your belief as well. And I think that also fits together very nicely. And again, if we're able to create value chain rather than just look for a transaction, buy something, sell something, work together and create a unique value chain towards your customers. And then it can be quite successful for the long run. For sure, we also have our challenges, and we'll talk about that. So again, the challenge, because I work with many Indian companies, to share something is not always easy because they want to have the short-term success. So I would say the challenge is to create this value chain together and learn how to share together, right? I think that's very important. Adopt further to the local culture and thinking, right? So that's very important that you really try to understand when you do business in Asia, who's your counterpart, what do they like and don't like. Maybe sometime we have to change a bit our tone and things like that. Right? So, and it's a very competitive environment. Chinese are here, the Koreans are here, the rest of the world is here. So you need to keep on innovating. Otherwise, it becomes a cost-based solution you provide, and it is not sustainable in the long run. So keep innovating, and then you will be doing very well in the Asian markets. So I would say, and conclude a little bit and say, India SME is much stronger when we work together in the real sense, right? And sit together also to come over the value chain to unique solutions, which will then add value and help to improve life of many, many people and make the relation as well as the economic gain more sustainable. And then we're in a good way ahead. And that's what we're trying to work on in a very small scale in Kirloskar Brothers in Thailand at the moment. Thank you.
It's really nice to know, Mr. Ramco, how the challenges are being faced and how you're trying to find out solutions. And you talked about huge waterlogging in Bangkok, and you found the solution for that. I'm sure Kirloskar Brothers will definitely find out some ways and means for Bombay also. Bombay every year, even in this week also, they have been suffering very badly with the water. I'm sure with your innovation and the solutions, you'll be able to come forward and help them also. So thank you very much, Mr. Ramco, for sharing your thoughts through this presentation, and we welcome you with all. Thank you so much. Well, now we move on to Mr. Ashutosh Tripathi, and my question to Mr. Tripathi will be, how the international joint ventures helps evolve local supply chains? and how introduction of new technologies would impact supply chains in the Indian agriculture machinery sector. Over to you, Mr. Tripathi.
Hi, good afternoon to everyone, and thanks, Mr. Arun, for calling me for this conclave. Uh, it's very interesting point. I'm very happy to join this conclave because I'm very closely working with MSME sector, because the companies which I'm working across my career in, mainly the engineering companies and automobile companies. So MSME sector has the major, very massive contribution in that. And if I talk about the agri industry, then tractor industry especially, because car industry is different, has different norms and different specifications and different requirement. But tractor industries, is a bit at second level two kind of technology product. So, and where the major contribution of MSME comes and small scale industries comes. So India, like we know that always have been the sweet spots for the OEMs, multinational OEMs. Like we have the low cost and agility in the delivery of the product. So whatever industries are available today in India, OEMs are available. They are doing the major sourcing from India. Like if you talk about the John Deere, if I talk about the New Holland, they are putting a new R&D centers. At massive level, they started sourcing the product from the India. Like Kubota, we all know that Kubota Escorts have done the joint venture with Kubota 6 months back, and we are in the process of merger and acquisition and making the 5 years, 10 years plan for the future. And uh, in the beginning itself, we have a very detailed vision and mission, like how to go for 3,000 crore to 5,000 crore to 7,000 crore to 10,000 crore sourcing from India for the different manufacturing facilities across the globe of the Kubota corporation. So those things are coming very prominently and very clearly on the map. And if I talk about the escorts itself, then right now 50% our the supply partners are MSMEs, like and majorly based near to NCR. So MSME sector, but the challenge with MSME sector always is like the consistency, the quality mindset, support, because they operate at very low cash flow. Liquidity is very low. So a lot of support is required, because if they want to improve, like everybody cannot become 100 crore company with the passion in 5-10 years time or 20 years time. So many people, many SMEs, they operate at very low turnover for the lifelong. So for them, kind of support which is required from the companies, it is not still given by the companies. And even the lot of effort is being done by the government of India, like making the MSME clusters, assigning the productivity consultant to them, giving some subsidy on this ISO audits, ISO certifications. So those things are going on from the government side. But I don't see across the states, it is not happening. The few states are very active. Like if I talk about the Maharashtra, I had a long stint in Maharashtra. So in Maharashtra, it is very active, but I'm not able to see in this region like Haryana and maybe UP. I don't have any much exposure of UP side, but maybe in this NCR region, I don't see much exposure and much support coming from the government side, or the clusters formations are happening. So we have to have some kind of uniform support to this system, because otherwise it is going to be a very challenge for these companies. So the OEMs which are the multinational, those are supporting well, because even at the higher cost from the higher price, which maybe Indian company like Mahindra, Escorts or TAFE or these companies may be getting. So the other people are able to pay some more money in terms of the cost of the part. Uh, but they need a lot of quality, the high level of quality level. So that the mindset, the training part, the quality parameters, those are very, very important for MSME sector in going forward. Somehow China is contributing well, again for the India, because of the situation happened in China, and many companies, OEMs have diverted the sourcing plan from the China to India. Even people are migrating from China to India. Same like we are doing for the many components, we are doing the localization. So those things, those activities are happening. So I see there is a good golden period is going to come for MSME sector in days to come, in next 2-3 years time, being China situation or China contribution. So, but parallelly, in case India government is helping to MSME sector in totality, OEMs are helping, but if government also supports them in terms of upbringing them or developing them and coming them to next platform in terms of the quality levels, in terms of the processes, in terms of the productivity enhancement, in these 2-3 parameters, then it is going to be definitely a game changer plan for MSME sector of the India. Technology wise, if I talk in the second question of yours, so I was working on some my paper some time back, and if you see like mechanization part, like farming industry, if I talk, so on mechanization part, India still is at very, very low level. So like if I talk about Japan or China and US, so their mechanization is about 70 to 80%, while in India it is a reverse. So India mechanization is only 20 to 30% right now, and still there is a lot of scope of the farm equipment sectors and low cost implements to be used by farmers, rice planters. Those a lot of things are there. Then there is a huge scope, and these products cannot be made by the OEM because the OEMs cannot bear the cost. So MSME sectors they can be promoted for this particular activities and for these products, making the cluster, especially from the government side, because those products are sold in the local markets, like making a small implement in Delhi. If you are shipping it to West Bengal, then the cost of the transportation will be much more than the cost of the product. So locally, these products have to be made, and small clusters has to be made from the government side, and that is going to help in totality to the MSME sector overall. So technology is important because we don't have the manpower working in the farms right now. We keep on interacting many farmers, going in the visiting many villages and talking to the people. So next generation is not ready to come to the for the agriculture activities, because next generation is want to move either out of the India or to cities, and people are finding difficult. So if you'll go to village today, you'll find like the farmers have created a same kind of ecosystem, like their next generation should experience, like the air conditioned, their houses are there, they have all the facilities in their villages. So they are trying to do that. Even the requirement is coming, like the products which are making today, like it has to have the car like feature, it has to be side tunnel signals, it has to have the gear shift system, some same like car. So for the next generation, the technology is very, very important. Otherwise, it will be very, very difficult for us to involve the people and engage the people in the farming sector, because that is a laborsome job. A lot of hard working is required there. So technology is important. Without technology, it is going to be again a big challenge in days to come. So lot of scope is there, lot of exposure is there, and probably like the multinational OEMs and the government together, if helping the MSME sector, it is going to boom like anything in next 3 to 5 years time. And there is opportunity for us. Like Mr. Rajiv was talking, like some decisions we take, government takes some time, and that impacts are very high later on stage. So it is very important for us to encash those things. Means like China is a problem right now, so how to encash that in India? So this is the right time and golden period for the government and Indian MSMEs to grab the opportunity and go to next level. That's all from my side.
Thank you, Mr. Tripathi. You have really given the good insights. The villages are trying to become all modern. Everybody is trying to become urban nowadays. So technology is the order of the day. And definitely government of India has that in mind. And they are trying to bring up MSMEs, promote them in a big way with the technology and value chain system and everything. So I'm sure in times to come, we will develop more and more in these things. We will appreciate if you have any suggestions, you can give it to us. We will also discuss with various ministries at our level.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thank
Mr.
you.
Tripathi. Thank you once again.
Yeah.
Friends, now we have reached at the conclusion of the session. Let me, on behalf of EEPC India, thank our eminent speakers, Mr. Shantanu Roy, Executive Director, BEML, Mr. Rajiv Nath, Managing Director, Hindustan Syringes and Medical Device, Mr. Ashutosh Tripathi, Chief of Operations, Escorts Kubota, Mr. Remco Duboy, CEO, Kirloskar Brothers, Thailand. Friends, your insight has been really very enriching and would definitely prone to valuable for the industry participating with us today. Thank you once again, and we will start our next session, and which is going to be the last session of the day on smart, flexible, and intelligent supply chain, international initiatives and lessons for India. This is going to start at 4 p.m. The session has invited very eminent speakers, including Mr. Florian Schneider. He's a consultant competence center economic principles, VDMA, Germany. Then we have Mr. Nebat Wagwell, he's the executive director of Tanzania Chamber of Commerce and Industry and Agriculture. Then we have Mr. Agman David Porat. He's the head of Industry 4.0 Innovation Lab, LET Lab Israel. Then lastly, we have Mr. Ari Maur. He's the CEO of Kiami Solutions Israel. So friends, we look forward to seeing you in the next session. And thank you very much all participants and the panelists for sparing your time to set up this session and enjoy. Thank you so much and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you to all the panelists.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.